but still we need to have one good line to play against all these minor openings. We won't spend more time than it is required, and you should not spend more time than it is required. You should use this time to study main lines, not these minor openings that we will see now. For example, the Chigorin and the Albin Gambit, for example. You should use your time to study more important openings, but you should know one good line, of course, against each one of these openings, because if you don't know, they can be dangerous. And you should spend your time to play endgames, for example. I have said through this opportunity that modern chess is giving me, I have told to our dear guests so many times that you need to have a chess partner around your level, preferably a bit better, and play training positions with him or her, and play endgames, play positions coming right from the opening. This is a very useful procedure for both players. So here we go now. We will study just briefly this line e6, knight c3, and c6. So this is, of course, a playable line. White has various options. As always, the main lines tend to be the better options, but they tend to also have a lot of theory. So here are our options. First of all, this move. This is kind of a lazy move. It is playable 100%, and after e takes d4, a move like bishop f4. However, this resembles the queen's gambit a bit. However, black will not here play a move like a6 or h6. He will immediately develop his pieces, and he has, because we played a lazy but playable line, he has a good version of a queen's gambit. However, the position is still playable and interesting 100%. Who wins here, black or white? The player who will play the best moves wins. The mistake won't be made maybe in the first 10 or 12 moves, but it can be made on move number 43, for example. Yes? Whoever makes the mistake on number 43, he loses the game. It's the same. In each case, 1 point. So cd5, ed5 is playable. You won't face all these rare openings so often, but mainly in bleach games. So cd5, a lazy option, but playable. Let's check another possibility. Knight f3. Yes, this is a playable line, however, playable move. Black has some choices now. We can enter this highly complex position where white sacrifices a pawn. Black is keeping the pawn for as long as he can with b5, and it gets very complicated, but playable. But of course, after knight f3, black can also play this move, transposing to a very theoretical position, the famous semi-Slav. So playing knight f3 just like that is playable, but you need to know what you are doing. So in case you come across this move all of a sudden, and you are not at all prepared to play a semi-Slav, what can you play here? My advice is not to enter this position unless you know it. But what can you play here? Knowledge can get you out of the difficulties. Yes, we can play this, of course. And now black will take with the e-pawn, of course. That would be a gift. This would be a good version of a Slav defense. Black should take with the e-pawn, and we get to a playable version of the queen's gambit. Our problem is that our move order is not objectively the best. We should rather have our bishop here and the knight back to g1 and play a move like e3 here. However, even this is possible. Yes, even this is possible. Nothing much is happening. This is a totally playable game. If you are a super professional player, even super professional players play like that. If you are a super professional player who is very, very interested in the opening, in the theory, okay, you may study the semi-Slav just for the occasion that your opponent plays this move order, which will be one time every 3 years, for example. So, however, there is also this possibility, e3 here. Yes, again, there are tons of theory. This is some version of the semi-Slav if we play knight f3, but we also have other options. Black sometimes even plays this stonewall type of game with f5, and it's also playable. And finally, we come to my suggested move. The move is e4. Now, black usually takes on e4, and we take back. Black should give bishop b4 check. Everybody will do that. There is no time to play such moves because white will consolidate his position like this, and he will have a nice advantage. For example, after here, we can play knight c3 back, and the bishop is coming to d3. I do not believe that anybody will play like this with black. Even this is a nice advantage for white. Bishop d3, check, and now we can play bishop d2 with a fine position, but look, even such a move is playable here because the bishop is misplaced on b4. So this typical idea, which may come as a shock to the unexperienced player, this king e2 move is in fact a very decent move because this bishop is misplaced, and our plan is to play queen c2, rook d1, and quickly come back to f1 with the king. So even this move, king e2, is very good. That's why after e4, d4, knight takes e4, black needs to act fast, and he needs to play this check. Now, there is no doubt that objectively the best move is this, bishop d2. And here again, black cannot take on d2. This is a very bad version of a semi-Slav, but black can win a pawn like this with queen takes d4. We take here, he takes here, and now bishop e2 is playable, knight e2 is playable, followed by lots and lots and lots of theory. This is a playable option, but highly impractical. If you wish to enter the main lines and do a lot of work, just for the rare occasion that this position may occur in the board, then you can try it. My suggestion is e4, d takes e4, knight takes e4, check. And here I suggest the slightly less good move than bishop d2, but far easier to play, the move knight c3. Of course, this move is good enough, and it has been played on several occasions. Here, it's the game between two women super grandmasters, Hampi Koneru with the white pieces and Nana Jagnidze with the black pieces. This game was played in 2019. So knight c3 back. The best move by far for black is c5 here. There is hardly any other move. For example, all moves like this, knight f3, knight f6, simply developing the pieces here, and bishop d3. White has a very nice version of some kind of mixture between, what can call this opening, semi-Slav or I don't know what. It doesn't really have a name. So here white has a fine advantage. Maybe even this move is good enough. a3 for an advantage. So knight takes c4, check, and this will be my suggestion, knight c3. We won't bother to study way too much this theory because that would be a waste of time. c5 is the best move, and a3. Black takes on c3, b takes c3. Now we have some obvious advantages, the pair of bishops and possibilities for an attack against the black king, and black has some long-term advantages, which are our weaknesses on the queen side, the double pawns on the queen side. Black played knight f6, knight f3, and now possibly the best move is queen a5 here, but so far none of the good players have played it. Jagnidze played castle. We will briefly see what is happening after queen a5, castle, and now this is a very good version for white. Black cannot just come and play like that. She is worse. Knight bd7, castles, and white has a big advantage. There is no time for black to attack this double pawn. So b6 was played. Knight e5 is in fact the best move, first choice by the computer, but all logical moves will do. A move like bishop g5, for example, here, and rook e1 or queen e2, just developing the pieces. All these moves are good enough, and later followed by knight e5. All these moves are good enough for a nice advantage for white. After b6, knight e5 was played. They are already, both players are out of book. Black played bishop b7. Let's consider this move for a second. This is a very bad move. I don't see any forced win. However, we will play a move like bishop f4. I would hesitate to play this because I don't want to block my bishop from c1 in this position. I would possibly, we calculate also other moves like this one, for example, or this one. This also appears to be very good, in fact, threatening checkmate. And if g6 to play here, I don't know if black can simply take on e5. There is nothing simple about this position. Or we can play this, bishop f4. Now, such a position is much better for white because black cannot really threaten our double pawns. He can play bishop e6, but it will take way too much time to play knight. Just imagine bishop e6, knight b8, knight c6, and knight a5. White has a free hand, as we say, on the king side. With a pair of bishops, he has a nice free attack. So this is something that black should not do. Quite typically, positions with only one open line, like this, with d5 and only one open line, tend to be very good for white. Two characteristics. The move d takes e5, like this, and only one open 5, the d line. This tends to be better for white. Let's see what happened. Briefly check, knight e5, bishop here, and bishop g5. White already starts having ideas with knight takes d7. Black played here. The computer shows some lines like this, if I remember correctly, which are in fact totally unimportant. And I think black gets a playable position, but anyway, we are already in a totally rare position, out of book completely. So what is far more important is to check how these games are played, far more important than theory, and how white managed to win in the end. Rook e3, white developed an attack, and in the end she won. So let's briefly check, of course, let's briefly check in the same game what is happening if black plays what is, in my view, the best move. c5, a3, takes, knight f6, knight f3. If black plays this, queen a5, this, I believe, it is the best move. We play bishop d2, and now he needs to act fast. With something like this, if he just castles, then white is much better. The queen is doing nothing on a5. We play here, we castle short, and we have a very nice initiative. So black needs to act fast with knight e4, start threatening pawns, like to take on c3 at some moment, or rather to take on d2. So bishop d3 is the move. Black needs to take the bishop, and queen takes. And again, we have chances for a nice attack, ideas with d5, for example. Black can enter an endgame with these parallel hanging pawns. However, this is a good version for white. He will strengthen his position. Who can tell us what black will play, what white will play after this move? Knight d7. This is what is the theory here? Of course, we are out of book already long ago, but we are in an endgame. What do you think white should play here? This is far more important than theory. So we have many good possibilities. And in my view, the correct move is a4. Very good. Our king will possibly come to e3, but a bit later. We want to play a4 and a5, regardless, fix the queen side, regardless if black plays b6 or not. So here, and a move like king e7, this would have been a further positional mistake. Here and a5, bring all the pieces here, support this d4 pawn with a move like king c3 or king e3, and white is fighting for an initiative. It doesn't matter if we are better in an endgame or in the middle game. What matters is to be better and to win the game. So after this knight e4 and bishop d3, again, white has some chances for an advantage. Now, let's check how some other player played. Let's check this game. White has a rating of 2359, Zinka Laszlo, and with black, some player Bandi Attila with a rating of 2200. So by a different move order, we are here. The move is e4. Take, bishop here. knight c3, c5, a3. Again, he takes. Knight f6, knight f3. Black needs to know what he is doing. In this position, he cannot just come and play chess. But most players do not know what to do because they are mostly focused on the very main lines. And here, with simple moves, bishop d3, white is better. So, knight d7 this time, just castles, queen here, and there is not many things are needed to play this position. Rook e1. And then bishop g5 and such moves. Rook e1, b6. Now, an interesting move here is knight e5. This is what happened. And if black wants to take on e5, he should better take on d4 first. Because as we have already mentioned, this type of an advantage, with the only open file being the D line, gives a huge advantage to white. Here, look, black doesn't have enough space for his pieces. We play here, or maybe a move like queen h5 or queen g4, and this game is not going to last for too long. All our pieces are attacking, rook is coming to e3. Black will be lost without knowing what he did wrong. He ended up in a very passive position. Just look at his knight on d7. It's not going anywhere. And the same, in fact, can be said for his bishop on b7. It is targeting at a useless diagonal. So it is, and of course, with a pawn on e5, we have a space advantage, which gives us the ideal circumstances for an attack on the king side, and this is a lost position. Which move is the best now? Queen g4, queen h5, or rook e3? We need to calculate. Yes. So let's see what happened in this game. Knight e5, bishop b7, bishop b4. Black takes here. D takes c5, and now a good positional move for black. Very good positional move. Who will find it? Very good positional move in order to avoid immediate defeat. Is this theory? No. This is chess. He played queen c6, an important move in order to force us to play f3 and block the third rank. Yes, this is the correct move. If he goes here, too late. Now, after every queen c6 or something, we will play rook g3 or queen g4, and the end is near. So at least he played this to avoid immediate defeat, f3 here, and now we need to be careful. We should not play such impulsive moves. We don't want to exchange pieces. White played here a very interesting move, threatening both bishop a4 and ideas with queen d3. Very clever move. Black played here and he blundered. He should have played this, but is this good enough, I wonder? Maybe white can play here, bishop g5, as it seems. Yes, the position is very problematic. So let's check briefly here. Actually, there is nothing to check. Here, white, after a few accurate moves, won the game. He is already winning a lot of material. Let's check now a game by the best players in the world. Carlsen against, no, sorry, not this game. Carlsen against Anand in 2013 in the World Championship in Chennai. Let's check. Carlsen played this here, d4, d5, here. And it seems that Anand took him by surprise by playing c6. This is my guess. Of course, you can never know. And he played here. Carlsen hesitated to enter the main line with bishop d2 against an obviously very well prepared opponent. And he played this simple line, c5, a3, and Anand didn't take the knight. He played here. Obviously, he has done his homework. He knows exactly what he's doing. The game continued with knight f3, here, bishop e3, knight c6, queen d3, by a totally different move order and in a totally different fashion. After c4, knight takes d4, there is a wonderful game by Carlsen where he beat Boris Gelfand. I repeat, don't search it under this. It's a totally different story. Yes, how he played. But the moves queen d3, bishop e3, knight f3, they are similar, and knight takes d4. So here, castles long, take, f takes, and obviously this is a playable position. Carlsen, did Carlsen have a tremendous novelty here to show and get an advantage and all this? No, I don't believe so. Maybe he got a very slight advantage or an equal but playable game. And in the end, after many correct moves, he managed to beat his very, very strong opponent, Vishyamant. Let's check one last game in this line. Of course, there will be a PGN with a bit more details here. So e4 take, knight takes, check, c5, a3, takes. Look at this game. Here, knight f3. Knight c6. Interesting move to prevent bishop d3, as it seems, because after bishop d3, we are losing a pawn. It seems that black knows what he's doing. White has a rating of 2415, and black has a rating of 2400. So white played bishop e2. Again, black cannot just come and play chess. For example, such moves, I believe, are very bad. White has to choose between short castle and bishop g5. Possibly this is good enough, short castle. And we are now threatening bishop g5 because with the knight here, bishop g5 is not so powerful. The knights are protected. But with the knight on c6, when we play here, it's not easy for black to get rid of the pin. If he moves his queen, quite often we can take this knight. So here white appears to be better. This is very premature. We play a move like this. And possibly this is the move, but again, white should be better with a nice, quiet move like bishop f4. We will also consider the move knight e5 here, of course, knight e5. Maybe this is not so strong at this moment. It needs to be calculated because we know one thing, that the position with only the D line open strategically tends to be very good for white. But of course, we also need to calculate concrete moves. Yes, strategy by itself will not do. So here, after knight f3, knight c6, white played bishop e2, and black played queen a5. Will you ever get this position in your life? The answer is 100% no. So white castled here. I believe also bishop d2 is playable, but he castled. Did he know this line by heart? I cannot tell for sure, but I really doubt it. I believe he calculated it. So here, knight e4. After queen takes c3, the computer gives a huge advantage to white after this move, threatening bishop d2. And if black, to trap the queen, and if black goes back, then d5 is crashing. Yes, unnecessary details, really unnecessary details. So we won't proceed more with this position. I believe we have seen enough. We will add some, it's very rare anyway, we will add some more lines in the, if black plays other move, we will check it also maybe in the theory session. Let's go now to study another opening. So here we are. Let's study this opening. d4, d5, c4, and all of a sudden, without anybody expecting it, black plays knight c6, the Chigorin variation. This opening, typically, when the computers were less strong, was considered still risky, but playable, and many strong grandmasters like Alexander Morozevich or Igor Miladinovic from Serbia, who used to play for the Greek national team next to me for several years. He used to play this risky opening a lot as well with good results. However, with the progress of the computer, many ways were found for white to gain at least a small advantage without any risk. Here we will see one of them, which is quite forceful. Let me show you a line which is very rare. And I used to like this line. It is extremely rare, but let me remember it. It is so rare that, yes, I won't suggest this line, but let's check it. Here, white played e3. I will show you another line, which you may check individually, and it is extremely rare, but I believe playable. I remember I have discovered it by myself so many years ago. So e3 was played here. white is threatening, of course, to win. If we play here and d5 with gain of tempo, in the opening, in every opening, whenever white can play the move d5 without the pawn being captured and with a gain of tempo, in the very first, let's say, 10 moves, white is almost always much better and possibly winning. So black needs to play e5. But let's check this move for a second. So we are protecting this d4 pawn, and based on the principle that I have just mentioned, we can find not the best, but the only move for black here. So what is, you think, the only move for black here? There is absolutely no other move for black to stay in the game. What do you think? The move is, of course, e5. Against any other move like this, we play knight c3 and d5, and it's pretty much the end of the game. So e5, this has all been played several times here, and the idea is, of course, bishop b4. So, but get in the trouble to check this rare line by yourself. A very interesting possibility for white here is this. Extremely rare move. It seems that black has several ideas. Knight takes d4, queen takes d4, knight takes e5. After all these lines, white has chances for an advantage. Let me give you one example. In this game that is out of book, he takes. If he takes here, king takes d1, again, white has some advantage in the endgame this time. Black cannot take here because of queen a4 check, losing the bishop. So black needs to either take on d1 or take on c3. So he takes on c3 and he takes on e5. Of course, now, if we play passive moves, we will end up much worse. A move like bishop d2, for example, is horrible. Black quickly developed his pieces and castles, either short or long, and black is much better. Of course, this was not our intention. Who can tell what white will play? There is absolutely no doubt. White will, of course, play this move. Very good. Queen d4, you found it immediately. And here white has a nice advantage due to the bishop pair. Let me now give a comment here. So regardless of what your computer will tell you, let's suppose we play this move and he castles. Let's suppose. So now, strategically speaking, yes, the computer in a tactical sense may tell you that the move e4 is good. Let's make it a bit more interesting. I play this bad move on purpose, bad move, but with a very high instructive value. So he castles, and now let's comment on the move e4. The move e4 is at this moment a big positional mistake, unless, yes, of course, the computer calculates 5 moves, correct moves in a row, and he finds it, but e4 is a positional mistake here, because how can black fight against the pair of bishops? How can we fight against the pair of bishops? The best way to fight against the pair of bishops is by creating holes, weak squares, accessible to our pieces in the center of the board. I repeat, how to fight against the pair of bishops? By creating weak squares, holes in the center of the board, and then adjusting our play accordingly. So this move e4 is a premature move. I still have a doubt, of course, because the computer may prove it correct. I repeat, but still, please hear me out what I have to say. e4 is a bad move. He will play here, and now we are not well developed to keep this pawn, this center. With f3, we want to protect everything in order not to have weak squares in the center of the board. But look, we are underdeveloped here, you see, and he is attacking. And if I play here, bishop f5 comes, we are losing a pawn. And if he plays here, what is the problem? Holes in the center of the board. And this is the way to fight against the pair of bishops. Now black can adjust his play, try to block these pawns. For example, here, maybe even here, prevent us from castling. Here he goes here, I don't know, d5 he goes here, he castles. Yes, if we can somehow block these pawns like this, or with knight e7 and c6, this is the way to fight against the pair of bishops. So what white should play here is not e4, but e3. We play e3 because we are underdeveloped. Look, there is no hole in the middle of the board. There is absolutely no weak square. An experienced player can understand that with half a glance at the chessboard. And after e3, what is our plan? Our plan is to develop our pieces first so that we can control the center after a potential f3, e4, and he plays f5. We control the center. So first we play e3, we stabilize the pieces, the position, we develop our pieces and the king, and then we play e4. So if they ask, what is the idea of e3? So common in chess, the idea of e3 is e4, but at a good moment. For example, he plays a move like this. Let me continue. Look, there are no weak squares at the center of the board. You see, I will not allow any weak squares. You see, I do not allow counterplay. I play like this. I defend everything. Yes, look, c6, I defend everything. I play here, for example. I strengthen my position. No holes in the middle of the board, nowhere or anywhere else. I don't see any weak square. And in the long run, I may play e4 or let's say g4 first. Look, I'm very experienced, of course, just like every grandmaster. I do not allow any weak squares in the middle of the board. He plays a move and only now I play e4. You see, I am very well developed. I develop all my pieces. There are no weak squares. He goes here. This is not accessible. I play king g3. Or he goes here, but then I will play bishop c1 if he goes here and knight g6. So we are better. Maybe this was even a bit premature. Maybe I can wait for a few more moves. Start with this move. I control everything, and in the end, we play e4. So please bother to study this line by yourself. However, now we study this forced possibility in the Chigori. So far, in this last session of theory, the most important thing that you have learned is what we have just said about the two bishops and not the theory. So c takes d5, queen takes d5, e3 is the move, a very forced continuation because now we know what black must play. He must play e5, there is no other move. Knight c3, again we know what black must play. He must play bishop b4 and no d5 this time. It's not the same position. d5 works with the pawn here and the knight on f3. Very rare variation, extremely rare. So here, white, if it was black to move, he takes on d4. You will be surprised to know that after this move, look how the openings are connected. You get this exact position from which opening? You get this exact position. Here we are at a Chigori. From which opening? From the so-called Danish gambit or Scotch gambit. Not Alapin. Alapin is with c5. Alapin is this position. Yes, there is no c-pole. So it's c5 on the first move. So you get this by the, look how, in a strange way, how the openings are connected. Let me show it. Look at, memorize this position. Look, you get it. This is a good position for white. You get it from this gambit, if you can believe. c3, d5, take, here, here, and here. Yes, you get it from this random e4, e5 opening. So let's go back once again. We are here. c d5, queen d5, e3. He plays this only move. Here he plays this. a3. He takes, and now we are threatening to play c4 and d5. This opening for black is very risky. It is true that black has scored some nice victories, but he was always objectively much worse. Knight f6 was played. For example, this is an even worse move positionally. He plays here. We can play this. I believe maybe even this is better. The only thing we need to be careful about is to manage to develop our pieces. For example, a move like this, bishop e2, and now we have a very strong center and two very strong bishops. The bishop from c1 will soon be a monster. And as previously without the queens, what is our target? First, we stabilize the position, and then we start pushing d5, e4, and all these pawns. Yes? So, after a3 takes, knight f6 was played in this game, and white played c4 just like in so many other games. c4, queen here, d5, knight here, and a4 is the best move, intending bishop a3. White has a very big advantage. Knight d7 was played here. Yes, a move like this can, a move like this can possibly be played sooner or later. Then we don't take en passant. We play here and knight g3, or even better to c3, and black is struggling. Then we play bishop e2 and castle short. If you ask the computer, it will give here an evaluation of plus 150 or plus 2, for example. So this is strategically lost for black. He has a very unhealthy blockade of our passed pawn, and we develop our bishop. Soon this bishop will be the star. We'll put it here, or we open this diagonal, we will open, and white is much better. Let's see what happened. I am unhappy, in fact, that when openings are almost refuted, this is feels like a stab in my heart, because I don't want chess. I want it to be more and more broadened. I don't want openings to be refuted. But truth is the truth. So here the computers are way too strong, and whatever is even slightly weak, it won't survive the test. So knight d7, bishop a3 was played here, knight f3, and bishop e2. White has a nice advantage. Possibly even knight e2 was good here. Knight e2, intending knight c3. Black is only playing for some tactics here, for some tricks, let's say. So in the end, white easily won this game. Let's check another game now. Let's check this game in the Chigorin defense. So c4, knight c6. I suggest this line, cd5, queen d5. What are other good lines? This move is also very good. Here, knight c3, also very good. Maybe a bit less simple, but also very good. If black takes, knight f3 is good, and d5 is good for some nice advantage for white. So after knight c3, which is another choice, black can play here. And now many moves are possible. This move, bishop g5 is also popular, knight f3. All these moves give a small or big advantage to white, unfortunately. So c takes d5, queen takes d5, e3, e5, here, a3 takes, knight f6, again c4 and d5. This is what you need to know here, and a4 intending bishop a3. Theory could even stop here. Not much theory is needed. The bishop will go to a3. Our knight will go to e2 or to f3. And we are doing perfectly okay. Knight e2, b6 to stabilize, knight c3. We are threatening maybe even knight e4 or something. So he played here. White is better by force. He took here. He knew exactly what he was doing. And queen b1. And white is in fact winning. He gave this check and he won this pawn. What if black takes, but you play the Chigorin opening not in order to defend this inferior endgame, but with black, but in order to do something, to have some active counterplay. Yes. So here white is simply better, much better, and he continues to play. So this was played c6, d6 or something. Yes, here too many pawns were lost, and white won in the end. Save. Okay. Generally, if you happen to play against a player who knows the Chigorin perfectly, then he will find a way to be just, let's say, slightly worse, considerably worse, I would say, like plus 0.40, for example. Yes, this is what black can do at most if he knows some line which I don't even know what it is. So b takes c3. Black has tried this knight f6 that we have been studying so far. He can play also this move. Again, we play c4 and d5. He can play also this move. The idea of this move is to stop c4, because now we cannot play c4. However, as you will see, white plays a5. So here, knight f6, c4, nothing to be said much. Knight e2, here, knight c3. There is not really much more you need to know. You just develop the pieces here. Can black play e4? He can play e4, but then he's presenting us with this nice square on d4, and of course this bishop will gain a lot of value in this open diagonal. I see this bishop and I'm afraid on b2. Yes, so yes, they continued, played again this a4 and bishop a3, and studying it much further would be a waste of time. What you can do is maybe see a few more games in the database. Save, yes, okay. So we check one last game here, something different with the white pieces. This very good young Russian grandmaster Saman Shugirov. So e3, e5, knight c3, very forced variation, take, and queen d6 immediately. This is what we were talking about. Queen d6 is immediately maybe a bit better than knight f6, but here comes a4 again, strategically very bad. Black played this. Let's comment on this move very briefly. It's equally bad. We take with the c pawn, and let's suppose, yes, here we can play bishop d2, but let's suppose that this was forced for some reason. Again, white has a huge advantage. Look, we play, for example, f3 once again. We stabilize the position. For example, here, I was not intending to take on c6, only if I double the pawns. So here I was intending to develop fast. Here you will notice one thing again by my play. What do I never create weak squares in the center of the board. You see, there are no strong squares for black or weak squares for white. Every possible square can be controlled by a pawn. Yes, so this is pretty much completely winning for white. Yes, we just put our pieces in the center, and then we start pushing e4, g4. We are always careful about tactics, of course, but is much worse. So after a4, knight g7 was played, knight f3, castles. Even this is playable, but again, it's horrible. Bishop a3, black doesn't have a move. He doesn't know what to do. For example, this is very bad, and just knight d2. Yes, and black can hardly move here. Yes, or he can play this move, and h3 again. This is very bad. We take with the queen, even with the pawn. Black in this opening generally is playing only for tricks. Strategically, he is completely lost. He's playing for tricks. So we are here, castle short. We have a strong center, and we have the pair of bishops. White is much better. Even after this move, maybe I would have played h3 here, but even after this move, it doesn't matter that we gave the pair of bishops. Look, white stabilizes the position, and little by little, he increases his advantage. I like how he played here, queen f3, and yes, queen g3. Again, this is very bad for black. So that would be a very nice choice in the Chigorin against the Chigorin. And now let's check something else. Here we are. So the name of this lecture is called Alternatives of Move Number 2. However, we should not forget about an alternative on move number 3. So c4, e6, knight c3. There is also this possibility, bishop b4. This possibility is some mixture between, some hybrid between the Nimzo-Indian, the Queen's Gambit, and the Ragozin. For example, if we play this move, which is 100% natural and normal, black will play this, and now we enter the Ragozin. Yes, this is the only way to enter the Ragozin. We don't enter the Ragozin in our move order. The Ragozin comes only after the move knight f3. So this opening is not called a Ragozin. So here, it's not easy for white to prove an advantage here. It's not easy to prove the disadvantages of this move. White needs to be a great expert in chess in general and in Nimzo-Indian in particular. So this bishop b4 is punished, if I may say, by transposing to a good version for white of the Nimzo-Indian. But we don't play the Nimzo-Indian. Well, if you want to play a perfect game, you will play the Nimzo-Indian here, but a good version. You don't really need to know much. So you can get this Nimzo-Indian by playing e3 or a3. But just a second. Here, this is Nimzo-Indian, right? No. In the e3 Nimzo-Indian, black hardly ever plays d5. Black plays castle short or c5 or b6. He doesn't play d5. What is wrong with this move order? White will play this move. Black has to take. Yes, this is playable, but then we play an opening. You will see a game by Carlsen. We play some kind of call opening with one or two extra tempi. Yes, but again, it's a game. Yes, doesn't guarantee win. So here he needs to take. We take here, and now we have a good version of the so-called lines of Botvinnik, the one that Carlsen and Anand played in the match, and of course so many other grandmasters. For example, black plays a move like c5 or castle short, but we have a very good version of this system because we are not forced to play f3. In order to get this system, white needs to play f3 very fast, and this causes some weaknesses. Now we have better ways to handle this system. So here white takes on d5 surprisingly, and e5, and he plays this and knight e2. Who knows, who remembers in these positions which one is the most famous game of all time in these positions? The most classic and famous game of all time. There are some players who have knowledge of the classic. Very good. It's the game Botvinnik Capablanca, where Botvinnik, with his tremendous preparation and deep knowledge of the positions, managed to beat the amazing, incomparable talent of Capablanca. So, for one more time, it was proven that work is more important than talent. Of course, Botvinnik also possessed a tremendous talent, but not as high as Capablanca, yes? But still, as I like to say in my students, and I would like to say to you too, you need to know things. You cannot guess the Nimzo-Indian or suppose the Bogo-Indian, yes? You need to know it. So, if we know more typical ideas, if we know even more theory, we have a big advantage over our opponent. So this is a good version of a Nimzo-Indian. We play moves like this. The best black can do is trade the bishops from a6. If you can believe, this is already, this knight c6 natural looking move is a positional mistake, because now black cannot exchange his light square bishop, and this knight is putting pressure in some very safe point. So here white will play moves like this, knight g3, and here, and maybe even without bishop b2. At a good moment he will try to play f3 and e4. So this is a good version for white of the Nimzo-Indian. Black should better play this, we castle, and this, and now there are several ways for white to play. He can continue these plans even without the light square bishops, or he can play ideas with like this, with queen a4 and queen a4, and such ideas, take and c4 and play for a nice advantage without much theory. So this is not over yet. Let's check first the game between Carlsen and Maksudlu. This is a bleach game, however. Carlsen, when he wants to, he plays very good openings, even in bleach games, when he wants to. So d4 and bishop b4. So two ways to punish this move. We can play a3 or e3 first. Let's check. Of course, there is some separate variation, which we will examine right now. So let's check. Bishop b4, e3. Black played knight f6, and what is our move? Our move is a3. And black played bishop e7, but this will not solve the problems because white has an extra tempo. Now, of course, black will not resign. Black can keep on playing. He can play a move like this, for example, take and c5. After all moves, he is worse. He castled, but slightly worse. Yes, the position is playable. And I like Carlsen's move. He played b4. He took advantage of this a3 move. Now, black can play several moves. He played knight bd7. They are out of book. He can play b6, obviously. And this is just, it is playable, just a good version of the Nimzo-Indian, and that's all. Because the move bishop b4 on the third move is a playable move. Yes, it's not like losing or anything. We are typically fighting for a small advantage. Let's see what happened here in this game. Knight bd7, he played bishop b2, c6, and c5. He evaluated that or calculated that black is not in time to play e5, and or that he can play e5 and still be worse. So he played this c5 move. This c5 idea is good when we have some development and we can control, we can keep this construction without intact. So queen c7, white played bishop d3, and black played e5. This e5 move is not always the solution. White could also play this, and objectively, again, white is better. Look here, and castle short. Yes, again, white is better here after knight e2 because our attack is faster on the other side. Objectively, we can even play f3 at a good moment. But here, black also has some play, and also, like for bleach, it can be dangerous. Here and knight f8. Yes, I would also prefer to take on e5. So Carlsen played here, and after e5, he took it, and takes, queen c2. Maybe there were, of course, more accurate moves. Yes, this is just a bleach game, or maybe there were not. So here, take, queen here, knight e2. It seems to me that white is better. h3 here, and he won a pawn, and the rest of the game doesn't really matter. Ali managed to win. Let's check it fast. Yes. Here, black resigned in this bleach game. Let's check now. Yes, let's check this game between David Navarra, a really, really good player and a wonderful person, and some also good players, it seems, Roussel, Rosemont, Thomas, Gibraltar Masters, with a rating, white has a rating of 27.17 and black has a rating of 24.73. So both players are very good. So here, two ways to punish this line. However, make no mistake, none of these lines is like can guarantee a huge advantage to us. Maybe only the Chigorin, which is way too risky. So two ways to punish this line, a3 and e3. However, some, let's say, knowledge in the Nimzo-Indian is required. Yes, this is not working, and b4, we play a4, c6. Yes, here black is lost. So after bc3, black played knight f6, and white played e3. White's idea is to take on d5 and then play bishop d3. Black can take on c4 himself, but then he is a tempo down in an Nimzo-Indian, where white usually plays bishop d3, bishop takes c4. However, as correctly pointed out by one of the players, there is one line which is individual. It does not transpose to a Nimzo-Indian. This line is the move c6. The idea of c6 is, after we take on d5, obviously to take with the c pawn, surprisingly. Yes? So white has at least two good ways to fight for an advantage. One way is what Navarra played, a4. However, I like this other way even better, other way that you will see. So a4, threatening bishop a3, black needs to castle, bishop a3, here and knight f3. Of course, black has only one good move here. Yes, who can find the good move based on what we have said so far? What do you think black should play here? What is the theory here? I wonder what is the theory here. Black himself with e6, d5 and c6 created a horrible piece for himself. Then the bishop on c8. So black needs to exchange it from a6. This is his idea. He wants to exchange it from a6. Very good. He played b6. That's the only move that makes sense. We know by now that this move is a positional mistake already. Now we can even take on d5 or play a move like bishop d3 first, and black has trouble with his bishop on c8. So here black played b6 and white takes, and bishop b5. This is a very typical action, bishop b5. The idea is not to take the rook if our opponent doesn't see it. The idea is to distract black's pieces, either the knight from b8 or the bishop from c8, so that black cannot play bishop a6. This is very typical also in the French defense. So bishop d7 was played and white played bishop d3. Black insists with bishop c8. Now white played queen e2. I can tell you that after this move c4, white might have a small advantage, as we will see also later. This is the correct idea, to play c4 and take on d5. He played queen e2, which also makes sense, and here he castled with a lot of imagination, because if white takes here, obviously this is the move, and here I believe he will take this knight. Maybe he has other moves as well, but I think this is good enough. And now possibly, I'm not so sure now what is the best move. Maybe to take on d5. The way I see it, even this appears normal if I'm not blundering anything. And okay, it seems white has a little something here. Let's check, however, an even better game now. Save. Okay, a game that I very much prefer, and I think we should play like this. So this is a bleach game between Irina Krush and Hademal Sharif Sarasadat, two very good female players. White has a rating of 24-29 and black has a rating of almost 2500. This bleach game was played in 2020. Let's check what happened. d4, d5, c4, e6, knight c3, bishop b4. We will not refute this system because it cannot be refuted. So a3, we can find ways to play for a small advantage or a big advantage if our opponent goes wrong. Takes, and here comes this c6 again, because we want to take on d5. For example, after this move, white was intending to take on d5 and play e3. How about this move? No. How about this move? To the untrained eye, this move looks very natural, but in fact, our plan is to play with e3 and f3. And if we play like this, which is playable, we're not losing or anything, but then this f3, black will play a move like rook e8 and h6, and we will have trouble protecting our e3 pawn. So we better leave this bishop on c1. The plan is e3, intending bishop d3 and knight e2. How about this move, by the way? Bishop f5. What do you think? Theory is not really needed here. I see two good moves for white. What do you think white should play? This is like a very, very rare position. A move like queen b3 can be interesting, indeed, but I would like to focus on the typical ideas of these Botvinnik lines. So a4 is also playable, c4 is also playable. This move, but before we exchange the light square bishop, I would suggest to gain one tempo over this bishop on f5. So knight e2 is a good move. I will gain some tempo and then I will exchange it. For example, he castles, knight g3, bishop to g6, and now bishop d3. And Sooner or later, black will have to exchange, otherwise we will take on g6. And again, we reach this type of game. We castle. We can play for c4, or we can play for f3 and e4 with a small but nice advantage. For example, after c4, we can play bishop b2, f3, but even this is playable. Look at this move. He takes, we take, he takes, we take back. Our bishop is very strong on b2 now, and this is a nice small advantage for white. Nice, very nice advantage. I can see that the queens will soon be exchanged, and yes. So here knight e4, I don't believe this is possible. Yes, if knight e4, I suppose we can play f3. Okay, it might be playable, but not a big deal. I believe we can play f3. And knight d6, still playable. So let's see what happened. Black plays c6. And now what I like the most, e3, knight f6, and I very much prefer to take on d5 immediately and play c4. This is what I believe to be the best. C d5, black takes with the c pawn, of course, that was his plan right from the start, and c4. We want to take on d5 on the next move, and white again has some nice small advantage. Black played b6. So we take here, he takes, and guess what is the move here? Guess what white is playing here? Let's see if you understood what is happening so far. Very good. The move is bishop b5 check, the best move. And this is what was played, and bishop d7, and white goes back. Now, we have a nice advantage. 92, we don't even have to play f3 and e4. So this is what I suggest that we play. Knight f3 was played. No, I clearly prefer this move, and go with a knight to g3, to f4, it depends. So here, for example, a move like knight c6, we castle, rook e8, and here we can play several moves, maybe a4, maybe a move like knight f4 or knight here. We can go for f3 and e4. We can play also on the queen side, maybe like this or like this, and we have some small nice advantage. Let's check the whole game until the end. Let's check it right from the start. So a3, but you can do the same after e3. So e3 is also good. Knight f6, a3, take, c6. We just take it and undouble the pawns. So let's check the move order by this game. A3 or e3, take, c6. Now, can our opponent play this move, for example? Yes, he can. Of course he can. This move is not refuted. He is not losing on anything. Should I know perfect theory what to do against this move? Absolutely not. I have my mind, my brain. I need to think. I need to connect, to compare the positions during the game, and I will play a move like e3 here or c d5. Yes, and continue playing. So not much theory is required. So c6, e3 first. Let's check. Take, c4, c4, b6, c d5, e d5, check. Here, knight f3, but I very much prefer knight e2. So bishop c8, white is insisting, and now queen e2 is very good, provoking a5, and other moves are possible as well. White is better even after castling short. White has a small advantage. I very much prefer this knight belongs to e2, but this knight f3 was bad. So queen e2, here, yes, a4, one of the possible moves. Bishop here, bishop a3, yes, normal stuff. Queen takes, okay, queen b3. Then white castles, and he, or rather she, has a nice small advantage here. The moves may not be the best because this is just a bleach game. After some point, he can play like this. Rook here, intending queen b5. Maybe, in fact, queen b5 immediately is obviously an even better move here. Yes, of course, she should play queen b5. White has a big advantage. In the end, she won the game, but this is irrelevant because it's just a bleach game. Yes, in the down to the very last seconds, white can blunder a piece or a rook, or black can do that. So you will check the game by yourself. Now, another line which is dubious for black. No. Before we go there, I would like to check at least one game which I like very much between two Greek international masters. This game was played in 2010 by a different move order in this Nimzo-Indian, because we talked about this good version of the Nimzo-Indian, but by a totally different move order. But we didn't see, let's say, one good game with it. So bishop a6, knight e2. It's better not to exchange on a6 in my view. But you see here, white in the opening was more or less forced to play f3, while we would have a more solid version with the pawn here and, let's say, our king on g1 after having castled. And then we will choose at a good moment whether to play f3 or not to play f3. Yes, here we have already committed ourselves with f3. That is a small problem. However, this position is still playable. Rook e8, knight g3, knight c6. This move, knight c6, has a lot of meaning because black is putting pressure on this e4 point in order to stop on this d4 point with knight c6 in order to stop this advance. If white manages to play this advance without blundering, then he has a huge advantage. If, let's say, I play one random move, now white can play here without blundering, and it is already too late for black to save the game. For example, here we are in time to control the center. This is not really something, we just move the queen. So the center is controlled, and then we have a lot of dynamics. We start pushing the central pawns, the d pawn, not this pawn, of course. This pawn opening the bishop, the knight is coming to f5, and white shall win. This is pretty much what happened in this game. So let's check. Knight c6, white goes bishop b2. This c4 move would be a big positional mistake because we go here. No matter if the knight goes to b3, in fact, this knight is out of play. So with this c4 move, white is much better here. With this c4 move, black removed the pressure from d4 point, and black is giving us a free hand to attack with the move e4. And as for this bishop, it can always come here at a good moment. We play e4, and we can play bishop c1. Black will be forced to trade this bishop. So here, white has a strategically winning game. Let's check what happened in this game. Bishop here, queen d7, and this is already a mistake. e4, white has a huge advantage. The problem is that with the queen on d7, black removed the protection of this f6 knight, and a sacrifice with rook takes f6 is coming. This, you see, a good moment to push e4 is when the queen is on d7, because there is this direct or indirect threat of taking on f6. So here, e4, we are threatening e5. Black cannot afford to allow e5. For example, if here, all this is very typical stuff, and the knight is going to d6, and we continue, of course, by pushing this pawn. So black takes, but he is not in time to control the center. He goes back, and this is a nice positional sacrifice. It's positional, it's not a direct win. Here, black played d5, white played d5. Anyway, he would have played d5 and c4, and he's not even in a hurry to capture the bishop, the rook, because his bishop is in fact stronger than this rook. Here, finally he took it, and he took this pawn, and he won in the end. Yes, this is just some very nice game which I remember from the past and made a strong impression on me. So now there is another opening, the last one for today, which is very risky, but playable. I wouldn't say playable. If you can play it in rapid games if you know it very well with black. I know it very well with black. It's this opening, the Albin Gambit. I know it very well with black, and I can take from this opening the most it has to offer. What can black do here? if we play good moves with the white pieces, the best that black can achieve is reach much worse or lost position. He cannot avoid that, but each time in a different way, and each time requiring calculation. This is what black can do and can hope for. So in a practical sense, it is playable. Which opening is better? This Chigorin or this Albin? They are of about equal level. I would say that Chigorin is better because at least it's not losing a pawn. So e5, we need to accept this gambit, and black plays d4. Now, everybody knows, I guess, that this is generally a bad move, and there are some good combinations. Black gives this check here, and black takes here. So white needs to play f takes e3, and then the position is equal after f takes e3. We have a weakness on e5, but it's an extra pawn. This is a very well-known theoretical mistake, and funny thing is happening. He takes king here, and black promotes to a knight. And if rook takes, then bishop g4 check is coming. Very well-known trap. So white plays this move to keep in touch with his queen. And now check here and check. And if you can see these pieces on the right, we were expecting them to be colored white, but they are colored black here. Yes, they all belong to black. So this knight on g1 seems like a yes. So d4, our choice will not be e3, of course, but knight f3. Now, little by little, our plan is a3 and e3. This and e3. For example, he can play a move like this. We play a3. The idea, just like in the Najdorf, is to control b4 square. And at some moment, we can even play b4 ourselves. So a3 is the best move. Now black has several possibilities. He can play, which you will see, I will give some analysis in the PGA. He can play this move. He can play this move. He can play this and this move. Yes, all these moves are playable. But now, far more important than theory is to understand what is going on. So after this move, first of all, this is almost losing by force. This is the worst possible move. We play e3 surprisingly. This you need to remember. If he goes here, we play this intending e4. And soon he will lose a pawn, for an extra pawn. For example, here we play e4. We take this pawn with the queen. Look at this position. For a second, just for a second, it looks, maybe even for 2 seconds, it looks that black has compensation. But in fact, he doesn't have anything. Look here, we protect everything. He castles, for example. We put the bishop here. Everything is controlled. If he goes here, we can push f4, or of course this move. And this is just lost. And if he plays this, we just take it, and we are very happy to have this extra pawn here, and white is more or less winning. So we go back to study these openings, the e5. So d takes e5, d4 is only move, knight f3, knight c6, and a3. So if bishop f5, we play e3, and now look, he goes here. Yes, this is what we need to understand. In fact, after bishop g4, black is not really threatening to win the pawn back. This is the most important principle in this opening. So a move like g3 or a3, the official theory is knight bd2, but I would like to draw your attention to the move h3 or even g3. Look what is happening here. Let's suppose we play g3. Black happily takes this pawn, this knight, and he regains his pawn. But in fact, this is a strategically lost position for black. After f4 here, this is good enough, but we will put it here, of course. And now look what is happening. White is strategically winning, although if we reach a pawn endgame, then as we all know, black is winning all of a sudden. But white is never ever going to reach a pawn endgame. Why? Because listen, when we block a pawn, a passed pawn, it is very important that the blockading piece, either a bishop or a knight, should be inaccessible to our opponent. So the squares that it can potentially be threatened, they need to be covered. So if a bishop stays forever on d3, white can never lose. White is anyway much better, but even if things go wrong with a strong bishop on d3, it's almost impossible to lose. Look now, which are, first of all, black doesn't have a light square bishop anymore, so he cannot challenge our light square bishop. And then, what are the possible squares that a knight can attack this bishop on d3? The objective squares, yes, not c1 square. Black cannot approach c1 square. So e5 square, b4 square, and c5 square, these three squares. But there is no, to two of them, there is absolutely no access. The pawn is on f4, the other pawn is on a3. So only the c5 square is left, which is, we can always control it with b4. Of course, other factors are also important, like fast development. Let's suppose that black gives this check. Okay, this is good enough, huge advantage for white, and even this is good enough. Here, and king g2. For example, a move like this, look, all black's pieces are hitting, we see, look, let's take the black pieces, all of our pieces are hitting on this d4 pawn. Black lacks dynamic because of this d4 pawn. And here, look, this bishop forever stays on d3. There is no access to this bishop, so black is simply lost. Yes, with the bishop standing on d3. We will adjust, white will adjust the strategy, play b4, queen c2, all these moves, and there is absolutely nothing black can do. You see, black feels the need to remove this pawn if possible and gain some energy for his pieces, but it's not possible because this bishop stands on d3 and it cannot be removed. So this is the most important principle that you need to know. So in fact, g3 is a very good move strategically and tactically, and this move is very good, h3. And if he takes, again, we take with the e pawn, we push f4, he goes back, we block this pawn. If we can play king f1, even this endgame is really horrible for black. For example, he castles a move like rook d1 or rook e1 or something. Here we develop our pieces like this. We control everything. Yes, and we have a nice advantage. If necessary, we can even replace our bishop with our knight if necessary. So here again, we have very good chances. Let's check one game or two in this line. Let's check this game with the white pieces. This game was played in 2015. It's again my student for several years, young Andreas Keliris. This game was played in 2015. He is playing against a very strong opponent, Chioara Andrei Nestor. White has a rating at that time, had a rating of 24-26, and black had a rating of 24-17. Let's check this game. e4, e5, we take it. Knight f3, knight c6, a3 is the best move. We want to play e3 on the next move. Black played knight g to e7. Now, the official theory here is b4. However, look at this move. White played b3. Just simply play, develop with bishop b2, knight bd2. This can be also a move that he thought up over the board. Black played bishop g4, understandably, and guess what happened? White played h3. Now, black can go here, but this bishop is really out of play. This bishop needs to stay in this diagonal. So black took the pawn. We take with the e pawn. He regained the pawn. And of course, please tell me what white played here. White played, before I press the button, he played f4, of course. Black went here, bishop d3, and this is already a strategically winning position for white. If they ask why is that, because the bishop on d3 is inaccessible. It cannot be approached by the black pieces. Let's check this game. Castles, bishop here, knight is coming to d2, b4. It is like a5 was played. White calculated. He played here, but here intending knight d7 and knight to c5. But white calculated, of course, that he is on time to gain control of this c5 square. All of a sudden, black played c5. So now this square is occupied by a pawn, And once again, the bishop from d3 is inaccessible. So there is no bishop a3, of course, this time. White plays these moves. He could have played other moves as well. Knight is coming to e4. Bishop goes to d2. This was another very clever idea. Again, we can tell by this line that all black pieces are hitting on his d4 pawn. He would very much like for this pawn to be missing, and then he would have a lot of compensation. Let's see what happened. Bishop d2, queen a8 was played. Yes, knight g5, an interesting possibility, threatening the knight on e7. And here, very nice idea by white. White found the chance to even undouble the pawns. Should we worry about a knight e5 move? No, never in this game, because this e5 can be controlled by a bishop on f4 or by a second pawn, white f pawn on e4. So here he takes, and white has a big advantage. He played here. Look at this bishop on d3, still inaccessible, you see? That makes the difference. And they moved back and forth, and finally, yes, white put it here because the goal of the game is not to have a bishop on d3. Yes, the goal of the game is to win, the purpose of the game. So here he calculated these moves, and g4, f4, in the end he won, and anyway, a knight, if necessary, can appear on d3. So this is the game. Again, we won't spend, and I suggest that you won't spend so much time on these lines. So just a second. There are some more also playable, some more interesting games. You will have it in the game session. And we managed to cover way too many openings. I count here, let's say 4 or 5 different openings in 1.5 hours. Of course, these openings, like I remember I was studying one particular line of the Ninth for 6 months, for example. For 6 months before I played it. Yes, not for 1.5 hours, but still I believe that you learned a lot, mostly by the comments. And what I want you to realize is that the value of concrete move is not as high as you think, unless you are a super top grandmaster. Then things are different. You are a super top grandmaster facing other super top grandmasters. So I would like to thank you all for your participation. If you have a couple of questions to ask, we can talk about it. Yes, some minor other openings, yes, also exist. We may offer one line. You learn these lines and we are all very happy. Yes, you learn these lines and we are all very happy. It's even funny not to know completely everything, trust me. So I would like to thank you all for your participation.
Thank you very much, Ioannis, for this excellent camp, very instructive lectures. I just wanted to ask one recurring question, and you can answer in 1-2 minutes. For example, if some players want to play this repertoire that you suggested after d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, waiting for d5.
Give me a second. Let me open a board. Tell me again. D4.
Yeah, d4, knight f6, c4. Okay, you showed knight f3, but let's suppose we play c4, e6, knight c3, bishop b4. Can you recommend people some positional system that they might study against the Nimzo Indian defense? In 2-3 minutes.
Yes, of course. A very annoying for black positional system is this e3, bishop d3, knight g2. But I will suggest another one. For example, this queen c2 idea that can be played without much theory. Yes, queen c2 is the most theoretical position. However, you can choose in every position lines without much theory after queen c2. Yes, so it is playable, but by avoiding the theory. Yes, queen c2. So e3 or queen c2 are good ways to avoid a lot of theory. Yes.
Also, this bishop d2 seems interesting.
Yes, it is interesting, but in my view, not so impressive.
Yeah.
This is, yes, but it's playable, yes. This intending here and knight g2 is a simple solution, and even better, queen c2, but with very little theory. Can this be a fact? Yes, it can. For example, if he castles, we won't play e4 followed by a million theoretical moves. We won't even play a3. We will play this move, knight f3. Yes. So a simple chess, as simple as possible. Bishop g5, e3. Simple way to get out of too much theory and get nice playable positions. Yes.
Okay.
That's
Thank
my
you very much.
suggestion.